Well, we're going to share it. I'll give it to Mike. Mike will give it to you. You want a chair up there? Yeah. Just hold my arm or something. Are we still doing the raffle, right? We're doing the raffle. Hey, folks, we're going to get started here in a couple minutes. If you could, silence your cell phones at this time. We appreciate that. Also, if you're a veteran and have not received a raffle ticket, please raise your hand. I see a few hands up. Okay. Who's doing the raffle tickets? Is that SJ? Okay. SJ will be around. Okay. You want to? Yeah, you can grab his raffle. We're doing that at the very end, so. But yeah, there's a few people with their hands up in the air. If you can. All right, SJ is going to be around in just a second.
Steve. Okay. Take it with you. There's hands up.
Wow. You want to take the whole bucket? Yeah. Here's the bucket. Oh wait, there you go. All right. It's SJ's first time, so give him a break. I'll just stand down here. Where's Mike Mercer? There he is. Okay.
Still had 2 minutes.
I'm gonna go.
Mike?
Okay. Well, usually he'll do it as introductions. Then I'll go right into prayer.
Single office key, right?
Yeah.
Key, right?
Yeah.
I just need maybe 2 pins. Yes. Okay, I can grab that.
It's the 2 pins. Right. Here's one. Tree gave me this one. You need more than one?
I think we're good.
Okay. Lon.
What's the preacher's name? God,
Mike. I'll introduce him.
Okay.
I'm handing to him, and then he's handing.
Oh, okay. I'm not.
Oh, no, you're good.
Not everybody.
I just did.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Good.
Yeah.
Turn mine on.
Yeah.
Turn it on or off?
Yeah, if your phone rings tonight, you're going to have to sit up in the middle of the stage, all right, and answer your phone. All right. Is anybody still over in the bar? We good? 7 o'clock? Well, good evening. I'm Dan Wilkinson. I'm the commander here at Post 370. I just want to welcome you to American Legion and another fabulous F.I.S.H. presentation, speaker series. It's going to be a great night. I can't stand up here in front of a bunch of people and not market the Post a little bit, so bear with me. We do want you, if you're interested in joining this historic and awesome organization, please get with me or one of the other Post members sometime tonight and we'll hook you up. If you want to follow what we're doing and what F.I.S.H. is doing, there's some great places to look. If you're on Facebook, take a look. We're very active. We've got a lot of events going on at the Post here. We're a very active Post. This Sunday we've got a chili cook-off. So if you think you got an award-winning chili recipe, bring it on. We'll be the judge of that. Judging starts at 3 o'clock. We serve breakfast here. Anybody here been to the breakfast at our Post? It's phenomenal. $10, all you can eat, cooked to order. Every fourth Sunday, March 27th is our next breakfast. Hope to see you. Our Sons of the American Legion, they're hosting a sporting clay tournament. Has anybody ever shot skeet trap? It's a lot of fun. We do it over here at the Powder Creek shooting range in Lenexa. There's 15 different stations. I think there's like 2 or 3 targets at each one. It's a blast. It's $60 to enter, but you get breakfast, lunch, and you get to shoot. You got to bring 50 rounds, though. You got to bring your own ammo. All right? And if you're interested, you can sign up in the club room on the bulletin board. All right?
Gauge ammo do that?
It's just the target gauge, 7.5 shot. Thank you. Yeah, no slugs. And we're even going to do the Club Room Olympics in April, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We got live music here every Saturday night. Usually it's country. Sometimes we get some classic rock or R&B kind of stuff. So come on out and enjoy that on Saturday night. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn it over to the chaplain, Mike Mercer.
Thank you.
Oh, also before I do, I want to welcome and thank American Legion Post 7 in Durham, North Carolina. The entire post is streaming in tonight. They're watching our event. So we welcome you. We thank Phil Goldsby for setting that up. Thanks again, everybody.
All right. Well, I usually just go right into a prayer, but I want to say just a couple things before I begin, and it's not a long prayer. But things were different a month ago, and we all know that. And so it's no small thing that people would be communicating with different people all over the world because of what's happening in the Ukraine. We got people trying to be adopted. We got people trying to escape. We got people that are planning to stay there and do what they need to do. And information is fluid. It changes every day. But God doesn't change. And He does listen. And it is no small thing, because it is the supernatural weapon that we have is prayer. And I tell people, I say, you don't even have to believe in God. You don't have to even believe in prayer. But it's one of those things to honor those who need it. And so let's go to the Lord in prayer, okay? Let's pray. Father God, we just thank you that you do love us, God, and you're aware of everything, small things and great things, good things and bad things, but you are always good. And we just ask that you would bring protection to those who need it, Lord. It's more than just those in Ukraine. There are so many all over. And there are so many here, Father, that need prayer just for their lives, God. Just for their lives. Just trying to make it. And just trying to make it with their health, God. And those that fixate their mind and just the anxiety of life, Lord. But we're going to give that to you tonight. We just pray that you bless the speaker, Colonel Devoe, and thank you that he brought his lovely wife, Mary Jane. My wife told me to pray that, Lord. So we're just going to give this to you again, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
SJ now wants to be called Steve. So we're going to ask Steve to come up and say the pledge with us.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Steve. Welcome, everyone here. If this is your first time, welcome to Friends in Service of Heroes. Paul Chapa, the co-founder, was looking for a good-looking young guy to speak tonight. He got half of his wish because I am good-looking. And although I'm not as old as Max sitting up here, the wait of 76 years has not been a burden. F.I.S.H is a place for fellowship, a place for family, for friends, and all those who love troops. Our mission is to make aware of all the sacrifices that our men and women in the armed forces go through in their service to our country. I'd like any active duty to please stand up. Any active duty? All right. I'd like... Oh, no, don't sit down. Don't sit down. I'd like to ask all veterans to please stand up. Are there any Gold Star parents here tonight? Oh, don't sit down. Unless you're old. I salute you all, and I want to hear a hurrah. Hurrah! One team. All right, thanks, guys. I got to talk about coming events. Is it time to do coming events yet? No, it's not. All right, we'll come up to that later. Do it? Okay, good. What do we got? April 23rd, Armed Forces Day at the New Century Airport. Last year, 3,000 to 4,000 showed up. We're expecting 10,000 this year. And we're going to need some volunteers. Here you go. Here's our volunteer coordinator.
I'm Angela. I hope you guys can hear me. We are looking for volunteers on April 22nd from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock to do setup and some work there. And then we're looking for volunteers April 23rd from 7 a.m. to about 5 p.m. to help us set up, manage the event, and then tear down the event. I have sign-up sheets here. We're looking for anybody, who can help promote FISH, who can help control crowds, who can help. We have a lot of young people who are going to be managing the crowds, who could be an adult mentor to those young people, and could be the adult leader in the case something goes wrong, and help support those young people. We're going to have scouting troops there, and we're going to have the Civil Air Patrol there. So again, young people working the event, gaining leadership skills, gaining volunteers, that they need adults there to kind of guide them along in case they have a difficult person or, an injury or something like that, God forbid. So I'll be here, so after the event, if you could come over and sign up, I would truly appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, we need some help, folks. Sign up. April 30, to my knowledge, the very first, time out for video. Oh, last year's Armed Forces Day. Here you go.
There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interest are in grave danger. With confidence in our own forces, with the undaunting determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. So help us God.
It's a big deal. Really looking forward to it. On April 30, at the Worth Harley-Davidson, is going to be, to my knowledge, the first Welcome Home Vietnam Veteran Parade in Kansas. About time. It's going to be flags, band, and a barbecue, and a ride from Worth Harley to Leavenworth Cemetery for a short celebration, and then return to Worth. Oh, fun. June 30th, combat golf at Falcon Lakes in Bashir. If you've never tried to putt with a DI trying to help you in your left ear, or ever tried to drive in a flak jacket and a helmet, you haven't played golf. It's now my privilege to introduce retired Lieutenant Colonel Smith Devoe and his wife. Please stand up, Mary Jane. 60 years. This lady for 60 years, not only a bedmate, but a cheerleader. God bless you. Many of us have our war and the battles we fought. Colonel Devoe had his on April 11th in 1966 during the Battle of Cam. He's here to share a story, so I won't go into it. Samuel Jackson played him in the movie Last Full Measure. There was a little mix-up in casting, obviously, but it got done, and I recommend the movie. The colonel was awarded the Legion of Merit, Silver Star, Bronze V, 3 Purple Hearts, Combat Infantry Ribbon, and just a whole bunch of ribbons. Been there and done that, which we all have. It's my privilege to introduce Colonel Smith Devoe.
Thanks, Doc. Excuse me, I have to clear my throat now. I don't know if I am worthy of that introduction, but I'm Smith Devoe. I've been married, I'm 82 years old, been married for 60 years, and you've already met my lovely bride. We have, after we were married, 9 months later, we had 2 kids. We found them at the Salvation Army, and they looked pretty good, so we thought we'd pick them up. We had twins, a son and a daughter. Our son, Mark, and our daughter, Susan, and her wife, Mary. And it's a wonder we still are a family. The first 40 years we were married, we moved 31 times. And that's not from Olathe to Lenexa or whatever. That's state to state, country to country. Our son and daughter, in their 12 years, their first 12 years of school, went to 9 different schools in 9 different states and country. So none of us turned into serial killers, and we seem to have survived all that. Quick intro, how I came upon being in this world. I was born in 1939 in Newton, New Jersey. For the first 7 years, I grew up on a dairy farm. My mom and dad managed a dairy farm up in northern New Jersey. Actually, my grandfather owned it, and they worked for him. He decided to sell it, and we decided to move to Florida. So in 1947, in the 3rd grade, we moved down to a place called Stark, Florida, or Stark, where's that? Because whenever someone asked where we were from, I'd say Stark, Florida, and they'd say, where's that? So it's just a little tiny town of about 4,500 people in the middle of nowhere. Stayed there for the rest of my school life, graduated high school, and started looking around to see what I could do next. Well, in Stark, Florida, you didn't have too many options. The only thing Stark is famous for is Old Sparky, and that's the electric chair at the state penitentiary, which was on the outskirts of Stark, where all the death row inmates were executed. And I didn't really want to work in the state prison system. I didn't feel I was smart enough to go to college at the time, plus I didn't have any money. So I decided to join the Army. So in 1957, joined the Army, went to basic training up in Jackson, Fort Jackson, MP school at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and they sent me to Paris, France to be an MP for 2 years, which was a real terrible duty. I didn't like that at all. Served 2 years in Paris, came back to the States. I ended up in a security detachment at a Nike site in Lincoln, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. I wasn't sure what a security person did at a Nike site in Lincoln, Massachusetts, but when I got there, they told me I was going to have a dog and I was going to patrol the interior missile area within the Nike site. The problem was they were one-people dogs. They only were obedient or mind at one person. Everyone else they bite. They were attack German Shepherds. I had to replace a guy, and we had 30 months to make that, or 30 days to make that transmission before he left. And that was an exciting experience in itself. So for the next 9 months, I had this German Shepherd attack dog dragging me around 8 hours a night in an empty Nike site looking for saboteurs that were going to come in and blow up the missiles. If he couldn't find anything else to do, once in a while he'd just nibble on me just to keep in practice. So When it came time to reenlist, I reenlisted at the Nike site, became a missile crewman. I was over it with the dog. In 1960, oh, let me back up a little bit. That's where I met my wife, and we were married. And henceforth, 9 months later, had our twins. So anyway, I joined, re-enlisted, went in the Nike site, and that was good duty as a missile crew chief. There was a warrant officer there that said, you know, by that time I was a buck sergeant, E5, you should probably do something different. You should go to OCS. You know, there's a lot of stuff getting ready to start in Southeast Asia. You can go to OCS with just a high school degree. You've got all the qualifications. You ought to try it. So for about 6 months, we went through the process, and I was accepted to go to OCS. In 1964, I went down to Fort Benning, Georgia for 6 months to Benning School for Boys, the OCS, what the OCS course was called. I graduated in March of '65. First thing you do when you're a second lieutenant, especially if you're an E5 before, now you have a bunch of money, you buy a new car. So I bought a '65 Barracuda. Mary Jane came down for the graduation. We drove back up to Boston, Massachusetts, picked up the kids, and we went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for 3 months. Infantry Officers Communications course. 3 months there, they sent us to Fort Gordon, Georgia. Training officer for a basic training company. At that point, I got my orders for Vietnam. So we packed up again, took Mary Jane back to Boston, or Lincoln, and on January 3rd, 1966, I arrived in Vietnam. I know there's probably a lot of veterans out here, and I know there's a lot of Vietnam veterans. I think depending on the time you're in Vietnam, it was a different world than 2 years before that or 2 years after that. The 1st Infantry Division actually went to Vietnam in July of '66. And the whole brigade went first. The 2nd Brigade, which Charlie Company 2nd and 16th was part of, we were the first ones over there, or they were. I was still here in the States. Had to set up a base camp, establish a base camp, try to figure out what the hell we were even doing, or they were doing. You know, this was a different war. We never fought a war like this before in the Army. Before, you always had front lines. You had something to measure yourself with, your progress, how you did. You didn't have that over there. You couldn't do fire and maneuver. It was jungle. None of that stuff would work. So by December of '65, they figured most of that out. And the whole structure of the 1st Infantry Division, especially a combat battalion, infantry battalion, changed. When I got over there in 3rd of January, landed in Saigon, did the normal processing. A lot of you guys know how that works. Ended up out in the 1st Infantry, 2nd Brigade, sent me down to the battalion. I had my duffel bag with me, with all my gear, my fatigues, jump boots, and all that good stuff. Reported in, and supply sergeant said, okay, Lieutenant, here's a set of jungle fatigues, jungle boots, a .45, an M16, ammo, pistol belt, rucksack, and all the paraphernalia. You're good to go. I said, well, what do I do with this duffel bag? He said, well, take it over to the company, and there's a GP tent there, and you can throw it on any cot and just leave it. So I did. The next day, the other thing, I said, you know, I don't have any rank or anything. He said, no, you don't want any rank. You're going out there looking like everybody else. You're going to have enough problems because there's going to be a guy with your RTO, your radio operator, is going to be following you around, which makes both you guys targets right away anyway. So don't worry about rank. They'll know who you are after a while, both the friendly and the bad guys. So I arrived in the field. We were the 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry, was a light infantry battalion. We didn't have armored vehicles, we didn't have tanks, we were just grunts. We were mud soldiers. Our transportation, wherever we went, was Hueys, Delta model. I got on a helicopter, they flew me out somewhere in the jungle with the resupplies that night. I got out of the chopper, and the lieutenant I was replacing was coming to get on the chopper because he was rotating back to the States in a week. And he said, "Good luck, hope you don't kill too many of them and try to stay alive yourself." And that was our passing comment. For the next 7 weeks, we never came out of the jungle. The concept of operation would be, we were there in that location for about 3 or 4 days, sweeping the area because intelligence said some Viet Cong, some bad guys, weapons, something was in that area, go find it, search and destroy. We found it or we didn't. If we didn't, we'd find an LZ, the choppers would pick us up and fly us someplace else and drop us off. And we do it all over again. And that's what we would do. We did for 6 weeks. Sometimes we found stuff, and sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we got people killed, and sometimes we didn't. But that was the way the operation went. About every 3 or 4 weeks, on a resupply ship, every 2 or 3 days, a resupply ship would come in and resupply us with ammo unless we needed it before that. Water, sea rations, all the things, ammo, all the things we needed to survive. About every 3 weeks, they come in with new jungle fatigues. Because by then, you guys know, if you're out there, those things were thin, paper thin, and they'd just be rotting off of you. They would just be falling off of you. Plus, they were pretty nasty after a while, too. So we just take those off, throw them in a pile, burn them, put on a new set of jungle fatigues. Sometimes we get new boots, sometimes we wouldn't, and we just keep going. So that's the way the company worked, the 3 companies in that battalion. We hardly ever saw the other 2 companies. They would be somewhere else in either the Iron Triangle or War Zone D. We'd be close to each other, but we would never be 2 companies tied together. On the 2nd of April, we came back to our battalion base camp. We were told at that time, that's when Operation Abilene started, excuse me, that there was a battalion of North Vietnamese out there in the Iron Triangle. Not sure quite where they were, but had a general idea. Now, the North Vietnamese, we had never fought North Vietnamese before. Obviously, it's different than the BC, the Viet Cong. They're fully equipped, just like we are. They're trained, and they don't hit and run. Not as much as regular Viet Cong troops would do. So we got all fired up, got ready to go, and at that time I had my RTO, the radio operator I had just before we came back in was wounded, so I needed a new RTO, a new radio operator. There was a kid there by the name of Harris. When he first came to Vietnam, he was only 17 and a half years old, or 17 years and 9 months old. So the first 3 months, he couldn't go out with us in the field because his mom made sure. She wrote a letter that said, he's not old enough, don't send him out there to get killed before he's 18. Not quite that way, but that's what she meant. So when I got back, when we got back to arm back up to head back out to find a D-800, Harris said, I want to be your RTO, because he could now go to the field. So that's Kid Harris. He looked like he was about 12 years old. He only weighed about 130 pounds. So he was carrying his rucksack and another 20 pounds of Prick 25 with batteries and all the other stuff that goes with it. We loaded up and flew out to an area where we thought they were going to be. Alpha and Bravo Company set out at a couple other sites about 5 to 7 miles from us, or 10, 15 clicks, and they were doing some sweeps out there, but they put Charlie Company into the area that really they thought the D-800 was going to be. We beat the bush, choppered in another LZ, started beating the bush again, and on the 10th of April was Easter Sunday, 1966. We found a little LZ that two Hueys could get in if they needed to. The battalion chaplain flew in, and we did Easter Sunday services about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. While the chaplain was giving services, about half the company at a time. Now at this time, a rifle company should have about 160 to 165 combat troops in it. Boots on the ground guys ready to hit the bush. At this time we had 137. We had lost several guys on the operation before that hadn't been replaced. Some were de-roasting out, and we hadn't gotten replacements back. So we were down to 137 bodies on the ground. So the chaplain flew in, half the company came to the first set of services, then the other half was going to come to the second, and we set up a hasty perimeter. Chaplain sits up, here's the woods right here, that's open up field out there for about 100 yards. So he's back here about this deep into the bush, and he's looking this way, and we're all looking at him, and he started the services. About halfway through, 4 people come out of the clearing on the other side, and they're all wearing North Vietnamese uniforms. So one of the guys immediately yelled at the chaplain, hit the dirt, and about 30 people opened up on those 4 guys on the other side of the clearing. 3 were killed and 1 was wounded. Or actually there was 5 and 1 got away. We went out and looked at the bodies, and they were D-800 troops. So we knew now that somewhere in the vicinity was the D-800 battalion. The wounded soldier, we also had a Vietnamese interpreter, South Vietnamese interpreter with us. Interpreter talking to the wounded D-800 soldier said they were a scouting party. There were scouting parties all out in the area, and they were trying to find out what we were up to. They knew helicopters had come somewhere in the area. They knew some American forces were probably there, so they were trying to find us while we were trying to find them. We sent the chaplain home, immediately called for more ammo, overloaded with ammo, because we knew we were going to have, something was going to happen in the next day or so. And we probably couldn't get resupplied too quick, so we had extra ammo come in. Everybody, all the troops had one bandolier M60 machine gun ammo strapped around them, extra grenades, extra everything. We picked up the company, and we moved them about 500 meters from where we were, and we set up a perimeter for the night. We also radioed back to battalion and said, we think we found them, but they found us too. So maybe you ought to think about sending one of the other companies to help us out here a little bit. They were a little hesitant to do that until they knew really what was going on. So the next morning at dark 30, we saddled up and started moving through the jungle in the direction we thought they were probably located. At that time, a company would move in a column of threes, almost like in a parade. One first platoon, or one first platoon, second platoon, third platoon, fourth platoon. 3 columns. Depending on the density of the jungle is how far those columns would either spread apart or come back together. You always kept, if you were in the center column, you tried to keep both other columns in sight. You never wanted to lose sight of your column next to you. So we're chopping through the jungle, and we're starting to move a little slower and a lot quieter. The good news and the bad news was, excuse me, we were in triple canopy jungle. Basically 3 layers of trees. Top layer about 70 feet high. That's the bad news. The good news is, when you're in that kind of jungle, you don't have all the other growth on the ground, because the sun can't get to it. You have some bushes and trees and scrub stuff, but you don't have to be, your point guy doesn't have to be chopping with the machete through bamboo or diverting around bamboo or whatever you need to do to try to keep on the same azimuth you were shooting, so you'd have some idea where the hell you were in case you needed to call in artillery. So we're moving along pretty slow, and nothing's going on. Noontime, we decide to stop, take a break. But before we stop, we drop 2 squads from the rear platoon off, and they set up an ambush. And we move about 500 feet, or 500 feet further, 1,000 feet further, and then set up to take a break, get some sea rations, check everything out, and get ready to move out again. We had just basically set up our own perimeter, and the rear detachment, the ambush team, caught 7 North Vietnamese in an ambush and took care of them. So we knew now, and one of the people in that column had a radio in that group. So now we knew they were tracking us from behind, and they're telling somebody where we are because they had the radio. All this while, we still have a helicopter out there somewhere where we can relay our FM radio communications back to the rear and to the other companies. At this time, they decided to start to move the other company, Bravo company, out to marry up with us. The problem was, Bravo company was about 5 miles away. Now, 5 miles doesn't sound like much, but if you're coming through the woods and you're not sure what's ahead of you, and it can take a long time. We broke camp right away and started moving forward again. We figured they know where we are now, we just might as well keep going the way we're going. As we did that, we still received some sniper fire from the front. And a little from the sides, but just a little sporadic stuff, nothing to get too concerned about. Generally speaking, not. Whenever somebody shoots at you, you should be a little concerned, but it wasn't all that bad. At 2 o'clock, 2:30, we start getting more fire from the front. At 3 o'clock, we walked into a hornet's nest. We were hit from the front. Now this D800 was a reinforced battalion, so there was about 650 of them. And they had heavy weapons, heavy machine guns, the whole 9 yards. We immediately took some casualties from the front of the column because they hit us right from the front. Not knowing for sure where we were, we still had to call in artillery because we knew there was a bunch of them out there. No one had started on our sides yet, but again, pushed from the front. So Marty Crow, one of the, actually, let me fast forward a little bit. You're wondering, why did Samuel Jackson play me in a movie? Actually, Samuel Jackson played the 3 surviving lieutenants in the movie. There was 3 of us. And I fast forwarded a little bit. I'll come back and validate that. But so during the gathering of the information to try to get Pitzenbarger the Medal of Honor, he played the input that us 3 surviving lieutenants provided and made it one person. So Marty called in some artillery, and unfortunately, 2 things happened. One, again, we were in triple canopy jungle. We thought we knew where we were, but we were off about 100 yards. And as the artillery rounds came in with those high trees, the trajectory didn't make it to where it was supposed to go. It hit right above us. And just one registration round to begin with. But that caused 8 casualties, of which 2 of our troops were killed. So we readjusted and then just turned it loose. We had 105 battery supporting us and a 155 artillery battery supporting us. So they start smoking the jungle. Everything got quiet for a little bit. We figured, well, they pulled back. Okay, we're in good shape now. We'll just keep dropping artillery on them. Maybe they'll go away and nothing will happen. We had 6 wounded and no way to get them out. Triple canopy jungle. Dust-offs, Huey dust-offs can go almost anywhere, but they can't come down through all those trees to get the wounded and take them out. The Air Force was notified, and they had a Air Force para-rescue team out of Benoit that was used to rescue Air Force pilots that went down in South Vietnam in that area. And they had parajumpers, paramedics on these choppers. And they also had a jungle penetrator that could come down through the jungle. So they came to our assistance. 2 of them came out there. They dropped the jungle penetrator, and we were supposed to load wounded on it, and then they'd winch them up through the jungle, through the trees. We didn't know what the hell to do with it. We never saw one of these things before. So one of the parajumpers in the Air Force chopper rode a penetrator down and stayed on the ground to us. And showed us how to work it, and we started loading people out, wounded out. In the meantime, he had come in with a couple of big medical bags and started working on some of the other wounded that before they were extracted. We got all but 2 out, and we were hit on all 4 sides. They had completely surrounded us while we were extracting these wounded people. The Air Force choppers had to pull out because they were taking rounds too. The Air Force parajumper decided to stay on the ground instead of taking the last ride out. So he stayed on the ground with us. This was about 5 o'clock. For the next hour, everything was just turmoil. You know, and no matter how hard you try to plan something, when you get in combat, it all turns to crap anyway, and it's just crazy. They tried to overrun one part of our position, and we repelled it. We kept having to pull our perimeter back, dragging our wounded with us, and just keep blasting away. Hueys came in and dropped ammo to us, and more machine gun barrels, because they say the M60, that's the machine gun, the M60 after about 300 or 400 rounds, you need to switch the barrel out. It's just a quick release, throw another one in, if you want it to stay accurate. Well, at that point, we didn't give a crap. Just spray the area. You weren't actually pinpointing people to shoot at. You were just putting lead out there to try to suppress their fire. But we did get many more machine gun barrels, M60 ammo, grenades, M16 ammo would come crashing through the trees. Unfortunately, a couple of those crates killed a couple of our guys. Because when you have a box of M60 machine gun ammo in a crate coming through can coming through the woods, the trees from 70 feet up, at chopper going by at 100 miles an hour, you get hit with that, it's too bad. So we lost a couple more guys there. At 6 o'clock, about 6 o'clock is when we figure Pitzenbarger was killed. Now, this was Airman First Class Pitzenbarger, the parajumper that was in with us. At that time, we had probably had about 15 or 20 of our troops were killed, and probably another 20 wounded. Somewhere in that confusion, and it's just confusion, we think he was killed about that time. Still administering first aid wherever he could. He was the only guy that had a flak jacket. He actually took his flak jacket off and threw it over a couple other wounded guys one time that we were overrun, or when they tried to overrun us. Shortly thereafter, one of my squad leaders was also killed, and that was Sergeant Robinson. He received the Medal of Honor, and it was awarded in 1967. Robbie was a Marine for 4 years and switched over to the Army. He actually started out in Saigon, but he wanted to get where the action was, so he had volunteered to come out and join our battalion. 2nd and 16th Infantry was kind of noted for doing crazy stuff. We had a reputation for getting shot more than everybody else, and I don't know whether it was the luck of the Irish or we were always in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Robbie actually, before he died, he actually took on a machine gun position with a couple of grenades. It was laying fire right across our line, actually our platoon. And he actually charged the machine gun nest, emptied his M16, popped 2 grenades, pulled the pins, and jumped in the machine gun nest with him and took it out, and obviously lost his life in the process. So that probably saved my life and several other people in our platoon. So it just kept coming. We just kept getting hit, kept pulling our lines in. Our final company perimeter wasn't even as big as this room. And inside that was our dead and wounded. As we were hit, we kept dragging them back with us. The final assault came about midnight. And still, no one was there to help us. Bravo was on their way, but That wasn't working at all. At midnight, they came all guns forward from all sides again and tried to assault us. They overran our position in 2 places, but they didn't realize the perimeter was so small. By the time they overran it, they were going out the other side, so if we didn't get them coming, we got them going. So, good news. And in the meantime, we got some in between. At that point, we thought we were all going to die because no one's there. No one could get to us. And there's still a whole bunch more of them than there is of us. And we're down to about 50 people now. So just before that final assault, we took some of our dead troops and put them over some of our wounded troops just to cover them, to protect them, and basically called in artillery right on our, when that final assault started, we just called artillery right in on ourselves. Fortunately, not too many other troops were killed or wounded from that final artillery, but they called it quits. After that, it got real quiet. They backed out, the North Vietnamese backed out. It was just like the world stopped. It was so quiet, except for soldiers that were injured and were obviously moaning and trying to get water and somebody to give them some first aid. So from 1 to 2 o'clock that morning, we collected as many troops as we could, made sure we ventured outside our perimeter now that was about, from those posts back that way, the company. And inside of that was everyone, alive or dead or wounded. And found a couple other of our troops just outside our perimeter, got them back, and it's real quiet, and all at once, a voice yells out, "Will one of you, will some MF guy come get me? I'm out here and nobody's taking care of me, I'm shot." So he said, oh, it was Marty Crow, one of the platoon leaders. He was shot 7 times. And I think, fortunately for him, he had passed out, and North Vietnamese just passed him right by and thought he was dead. And somehow he came to, and he's laying out there cussing. So it is a little, it's not funny, but it's a little light on side. So we sent 4 guys out there and drug them back inside the perimeter and tried to patch them up and do the best we could until we could get some other aid. Then we just hung loose. There was nothing else we could do. We couldn't go anywhere. We had too many dead and wounded with us. We didn't want to go anywhere because we still didn't know where those guys were. But they had basically backed out and left the battle. Bravo Company finally got to us about 4 o'clock in the morning. And they radioed ahead, said we're about 700 meters from your location. And we said, good, stay there. Do not, repeat, do not approach. Because anybody coming through those, what's left of those trees out there, we're shooting. You know, you can't do anything for us now anyway. Just keep your distance at dawn, come on in. So they held out, came in at dawn. Immediately everybody wanted water. You know, we were out of everything. My kid, Harris, my RTO, he was shot once. The radio he had was shot 5 times, so he survived better than our radio did through that whole battle. Bravo Company came in, set up a perimeter around us, which was not very, they didn't have to set up much of a perimeter. A couple of CH-47 Chinooks showed up with engineers on them. Now, again, the day before, we were in triple canopy jungle. And that's like being in twilight all the time. like I say, at noontime, it's still like twilight, because all that shade, nothing, it just looks half dark all the time. The next morning, it looked like a tornado had come through that place. There was no triple canopy jungle. It was gone. Basically, everything was shot up between artillery and weapons fire from us and from the North Vietnamese. It was just sticks. You could see the sky. It was bizarre. It was really bizarre. So the engineers rappelled down, or took some rope ladders, got down, put the chainsaws out, and cut a big enough LZ, probably about, well, twice the size of this room, so a CH-47 could land. The first thing we did, by then we had figured out who was going to live and who was going to die as far as our wounded, or had a pretty good idea. All our medics were shot. We didn't have any medics in the company left. So the first thing we did was load those guys up on the Chinook. The Chinook also brought in about 8 other medics with all medical supply to start taking care of the other wounded there. But survival wounded first, severely survival wounded first, and then the severely wounded that might make it or might not went on the second chopper. And then on the third chopper, we put the 40 body bags and sent them out. Graves registration was on the one chopper, but with body bags, but we said, you guys can't do this. These are our guys, and we're going to do it. So we put them in their body bags, and they took the rest of those guys out. 39 killed of the company, and 1 Air Force guy, Air Force paramedic, was killed. So we had 40 killed, 75 wounded. There was only 22 in the whole company that was not killed or wounded. So last out was guys like me who just had some shrapnel or just one hole in me or whatever. And then finally the rest of the troops that were fully able-bodied. We went back to our base camp. Fast forward a little bit. Well, after action, we went back to, before we actually left the area completely, there was also 20 dead North Vietnamese troops within our perimeter, and 40 outside that we could count. And we figured that they evacuated a lot of their dead troops when they pulled back out. The battalion did. But they missed about 40 or so outside the perimeter. And obviously, the 20 inside they couldn't get to them anyway. From that battle, there were 1,700 rounds of artillery were fired. 6 C-130 flare ships flew over all night trying to illuminate the area, so we at least had some light to see what was coming at us. And 350,000 rounds of ammunition were expended from what we had and what was dropped to us. So it was a lot of noise and a lot of action. And also from that action, there was 2 members got the Medal of Honor, Robbie and Pitzenbarger. 3 members got the Distinguished Service Cross, 5 Silver Stars, 10 Bronze Stars, and 115 Purple Hearts. Between the killed and wounded, 115. Robinson got his Medal of Honor in 1967. He was awarded it. I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Mary Jane and I and the kids were at Fort Dix, New Jersey at the time. And we were invited down to the ceremony. I'll get to that in a minute if I have time. 3 days later, we had a company formation. of the survivors to see actually how we stood. It was just 3 days of getting back together, cleaning everything up, reloading, and just figuring out what was going to happen next. 3 days later, we had a company formation. First platoon, my platoon, there was 9 of us that were ready to go back out in the field, ready for combat. Second platoon had 12, third platoon had 10, and the fourth platoon had 8. And that was what was left of the company that was still combat ready. 5 days later, we were back out in the jungle. They just backfilled us with troops from other companies and new replacements. And 5 days later, we had moved back out in the jungle and started all over again. Pitzenbarger, excuse me, did not receive his Medal of Honor until December of 2000. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He was recommended for the Medal of Honor, but the Air Force decided to give him the Air Force Cross, which is equivalent to the Army's Distinguished Service Cross, the next award under the Medal of Honor. That didn't set well with Pitzenbarger's unit, which was they were called the Benoit Eagles, and they were the air rescue units, okay? So they went back and petitioned for him to get the Medal of Honor. And that went on and on and on, and nothing came of it. So finally, in 1992, they decided to get the Charlie Company survivors involved in presentation or documenting the Medal of Honor. So that's the first time we got involved. 18 of us were involved with interviews, writing letters, personal interviews, to see what we could do to get him the Medal of Honor. Finally, in December 2000, he was awarded the Medal of Honor by the Secretary of the Air Force. It took that long. The movie, The Last Full Measure, is basically about that process of getting Pitzenbarger the Medal of Honor. It has flashbacks to our battle, has interviews. That's where Samuel Jackson plays 3 of us lieutenants. And there's also, I don't know if you ever saw the cast, but it's Christopher Plummer, Samuel Jackson, Ed Harris, Sebastian Stan, William Hurt, and several other top name movie folks are in this movie. Christopher Plummer played the dad, in Pitzenbarger's dad. Samuel Jackson played 3 good-looking guys. Ed Harris played one of the Benoit Eagle helicopter pilots. William Hurt played part of our a couple members of our platoon, and there's a couple other names that aren't up there that played the other members of the platoon, composite members, 3 or 4 stories all rolled into one person. Unfortunately, Christopher Plummer passed away about 6 months ago. Oh, Peter Fonda. Peter Fonda passed away just before the movie was released, okay? And just the other day, William Hurt passed away. So 3 of the main characters in the movie have now also passed away. Let me tell you one quick funny story, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. One other thing real quick. You know, I know a lot of you guys are in Vietnam, and you can relate to this, especially if you're out humping in the woods. We never talked to anyone back home. I left Mary Jane at the Boston Logan Airport in January and said goodbye, and the next time I talked to her is when I said hello 12 months later at the Boston airport. So the only way she got communications from me was letters, per se. Not really letters. Most of them was, I'm sure you know, piece of sea ration box, pulled off, Mary Jane Devoe, yada da da da, flip it over. Hey, I'm okay, everything's fine, don't worry, free. Give it to the resupply chopper and they put it in the mail. Once in a while we get sundry packs with some envelopes and cigarettes and stuff in them, and they'd have some stuff you could write on. So that was our communications. You got that Anne Margaret one? Okay. So this is 3 months later, after April 11th. We're back in the field. I don't know if you can tell, but that's the good-looking guy is me. That's Anne Margaret. That's my RTO, radio operator. And that was the company commander, and that was my platoon sergeant. So we're back out in the field, and we are hot on the heels of a North Vietnamese company, which is a lot more fun than being hot on the heels of a North Vietnamese battalion. And we had them pretty well cornered, and we were pushing them into another company that was a blocking force that was going to catch them from the other side. We thought within a day we could probably get them. And we were really psyched because this was going to be payback big time. We get a call on the radio and it says, break contact, go to shoot an azimuth of whatever, 500 meters, and you'll find an LZ. Secure the LZ. We have a VIP coming in. So here we are getting ready to hopefully annihilate a company of North Vietnamese, and we had to break contact because the VIP's coming in. So we break contact, we set up a perimeter. The guys, you can see part of the way around, are setting up the perimeter. A chopper pulls in, and it's Anne Margaret. Most of the times you think a guy that's been out in the jungle for 6 or 8 months would be excited as hell to see Anne Margaret. We weren't. We wanted to get the North Vietnamese. So we almost got in trouble for this, but who cared? What are they going to do, send us to Vietnam? We were there already. So Anne Margaret's walking around the perimeter a little bit talking. My RTO happened to have one of the, in the sea rations you get your cigarettes and stuff, the little brown plastic pack, had a couple of ears in it. I'll say they were monkey ears, okay? And he walks up and he says, on behalf of Charlie Company 16th, I'd like to present these to you. So that's what he's doing right there. He's giving it to her, and she's getting ready to open it. The company commander is saying, watch this. And I'm back there grinning. And she opens it, and she goes crazy. She throws it up in the air, runs, gets on the helicopter, chopper takes off, and we know we're in trouble. A little later, we get a call from the battalion commander, Damage 6, and says, when you get back, whenever that is, I want, to the company commander, I want you and all your lieutenants to report to me ASAP. And we got our butts chewed and stuff, but it was worth it. So that's the Anne Margaret story. And that we always have this emblem, and we still have it for the survivors. April 11th, 1966. And we were called the Mud Soldiers because we just walked through the jungle all year long. So in 1967, we go down to the Medal of Honor ceremony. It was great. Mary Jane got to meet some of my old buddies that survived all that, including the battalion commander. 3 months before I left the country, I was promoted to first lieutenant. They took me out of the rifle company, and I became the battalion support platoon leader, which meant flying the choppers out to each company, resupply, ammo, water, all the necessities. in that job for about a month and a half, and all 4 companies in a battalion were out in the field. And we were resupplying the companies that evening, and on the slick going to Huey going out to the battalion headquarters, they had the regular sea rations and stuff, and they had 2 big duffel bags of fried chicken. So I said, this isn't going to work. You know, Charlie Company had just been through some other stuff, so I jump on the chopper that has the battalion supplies on it, and I take it to Charlie Company instead, and give them the battalion commander and his staff's 2 duffel bags of chicken along with regular sea rations. So I'm flying, choppering it back, and I get the call. You know, damage 9 or 5, this is damage 6. Where are you? Said, on the way back for resupply. Said, I need to see you. I said, say again? Say, you know, and just, so he caught up with me. And he said, if it was anybody but you, I'd probably shoot you or give you a bad OER. Said, but anybody that had that big a cage to do that, I admire you, so good job. So we go down to the Medal of Honor ceremony. I introduced Mary Jane to my battalion commander, ex-battalion commander. What's the first thing he said?
Your husband stole
My chicken. So there's some fun times in there and some crazy times, but yeah. It's, so then in 2003, I'm almost out of time here. In 2003, the concept of the movie came out, The Last Full Measure, based on the story of Pitzenbarger and what it took to get his Medal of Honor. We were all interviewed again, 16 of us, and had assigned releases. And the film started in 2005, okay? And it didn't get completed until 2019. Hollywood, egos, money, priorities, it was just bounced all over the place. But the producer, director of this thing, Todd Robinson, stuck with it all those years. He was going to see this project through. And finally, on March 30th, 2019, Mary Jane and I got to attend the first private showing of the movie with the survivors of the survivors of the April 11th Charlie Company, the Benoit Eagle helicopter survivors, and Pitzenbarger's family. And his mom was there. She was 96 years old. And at the end of the movie, we all had the opportunity to go up, and she gave us a special coin, and I forgot to bring it. But you know the old coin, challenge coins? And it says, The Last Full Measure, Charlie Company, 2nd of 16th, with the dates on it. She passed away. The movie came out in January of 2020. It was released here on AMC, in the AMC theaters. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see it. Then pandemic hit, and obviously everything shut down. She died 2 days before the actual release of the movie. Pitzenbarger's father, actual father, died 1 month after the Medal of Honor ceremony. He had cancer, and it was amazing that he lived that long. Charlie Company's still around. There's about 12 of us still kicking from April 11th. We have a reunion every June in Branson, but there became so few of us that we decided to include all Charlie Company's 2nd of 16th that was ever in Vietnam in combat. So now we're back up to about 70 or 80 people. But there's still a few of us kicking around, and we'll be down there next June, or this coming June, for our next we call it reminiscence. But all you old soldiers know that drink, and every year the stories get deeper and stretched out, and a little exaggeration until everybody, you know how that goes. So that was basically my story. A lot of other things happened in our lives. Second tour in Vietnam, shot one more time just because I'd never learned how to not get shot, I guess, or something. And then a military career, and then on in the corporate world for 22 years. Mary Jane and I moved back to Olathe in 2005. We've been here ever since. Our kids haven't left since we came back, so they still like us around. And we have a lot of old friends who we knew from several tours up in Leavenworth. Some of them are here tonight also. So here we are. Is there any questions or?
Sir, I have one.
Yes, sir.
So this was 5 months after the Battle of the Dragon. Everybody knows about LZ X-ray and LZ Albany,
Yep.
right? And Albany was way worse than X-ray was.
Yep.
Those that study history and those who were there know that, right? But that movie, the movie We Were Young, we were one.
We were young soldiers.
There we go. Yeah, that was about X-ray, right?
Yes.
Did you guys talk about that? Was that part of your planning when you went into this operation that led to April 11th? Yeah.
See, the first cab was up in 2 Corps, up in Pleiku, and we thought, I don't know what, who knows? I was just a dumbass second lieutenant infantry, and I don't know what those other planners did or thought about.
So the Army still didn't learn its lesson then on studying history.
I don't think they had their lessons learned. Plus, it was a little different. You had a battalion against a regiment, and they had other support there and stuff, where I think our division commander, and he admitted it afterwards, grossly underestimated what the outcome of that was going to be. He really thought that we could grab them. We were the bait. We were going to trip them up, and then 2 other companies were going to come in and help mop them up. And the terrain, nothing worked right, and we were just there.
And you mentioned Chinooks, right, and how important they were to you. We've got a Chinook veteran right here who has some stories of his own. I just want to say your connection to what he's doing or what he did is astronomical, and he too should be very proud of what he did and his time in the Chinooks and survivor of his bird. So thank you very much.
Okay. And in light of that, in Vietnam, there was one thing scarier than being in the jungle and being shot at. It was in a Huey, with some 18-year-old at the sticks, and you're at a stick of 10, and you're at about 1,000 feet. You drop down to treetop level. Trees are hitting the skids, and your feet are getting knocked off the skids because you're hanging out already, ready to get out. And you look up and you see the rotor blades about that far apart. And these guys are just jockeying around up there having a grand old time. But yeah, that is scary.
Smitty, they tell the story of that firefight when Mary Jane was back east, and somehow she knew.
Oh, yes, thank you. No communications again, you know what it was. So you want to find out about Vietnam, you watch the 5 o'clock news or Walter Cronkite or whoever. On April 11th, or actually April 12th by the time they put out the news on it, Mary Jane was sitting home at her parents' house at Concord, Mass, or Lincoln, Mass, and Walter Cronkite comes on the radio and says a small unit, company-sized unit of the 1st Infantry Division suffered severe casualties. And for some reason, she just she knew. And the way notifications went back then, just like they did for We Were Young and Soldiers, if you saw that movie, somebody would come up to your door in an Army sedan. It was different from the wives that were all living on post. By this time, replacements were coming in and wives and family were living all over. So the notification process was an Army sedan with someone in it pulls down the driveway and stops and knocks on the door and says, I'm sorry to inform you, the Department of Army, da 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 da. So she was just sitting there for about 5 days waiting for that sedan to come down the driveway. And it took about 10 days before she got something back from me, but after about 5 days, figured, well, I'm not going to get that damn insurance after all.
Colonel, I have a question for you. It's coming in from Appleton, Wisconsin, actually. So when you were surrounded, what went through your mind? It's an online question.
Probably what didn't go through my mind. At some point, you know, first concern is trying to keep your guys alive. And you do what you can to do that. And, you know, you can only do so much. Then trying to keep yourself alive, and then just thinking about family, thinking about, will I ever see them again? I mean, we just knew towards the end that no one was going to get out of that alive. There was just no way. Fortunately, they backed off. So it's just a little, you get very religious. You make promises to God you never kept. And it's a lot of everything. Family, friends, your troops, and yourself. All of it.
How was the weather situation in Vietnam? Did you have cold weather, warm weather?
Where we were, thank you. We were in 3rd Corps, which was around the Saigon area. And we had 2 seasons, hot and dry, and hot and wet. We had about 4 months of monsoons, and basically you just stayed wet all the time, or almost. And then the other 8 months or so was just hot and dry. In triple canopy or jungle type, it get to 110 degrees. And it never got cold. It was never cold. Probably if it got down to 70 or 80, you had your poncho liner you'd wrap up in because you thought you were going to freeze to death, you know, because it always stayed so hot. And everybody had a poncho and that old cami poncho nylon liner that you carried with you. That was your bed.
So after April 11th, you know, I'm sure the immediate night you probably fell asleep really quick because you were worn out. Following nights, how were you able to sleep?
Probably the first 2 or 3 days, especially in my position as being responsible when we went into that battle, instead of the 42 troops in my platoon, I only had about 35 or 33. Trying to think of what might have been something I could have done different to maybe save a few more. But you know, it's hard to, after a couple of days, things just start up again, and it's deja vu, and it's tough. Probably the first couple of nights, drank more than slept. We had unlimited supply of alcohol for about 24 hours after we got back. So most of us were in a little bit of a stupor for a while. Then we got serious and reloaded and went on with it. But it took, well, it's something that we'll never get over. The survivors never get over, especially in something like that. So it's always there. I never talked about that particular battle with our family or anything until some of this stuff came up with the last full measure. And there was also a book that was called The Mud Soldiers that was published in 1980-something about Charlie Company and the battle in Vietnam. That's the first time I ever brought it up in all those years. There's another saving factor here, I think, to the best of my knowledge. I was a career military. When I got back from Vietnam, I still had brothers around me that had been there. I had that support. It was still part of the job, wherever we were. I think the people that had a larger problem were just the guys that were enlisted or drafted, and 2 or 3 years later came back. We were not appreciated, you know, and they didn't have any. They went back to their civilian communities. They didn't have these other guys right there that had some contact in Vietnam or had some experience like that. So they were just on their own. And there weren't the facilities back then that there are today to help a lot of soldiers that come back. We were not liked. One other quick story, then I'll shut up, I promise. After my second tour in Vietnam, I had 3 years of college that I accumulated. I got my regular Army commission, and the Army sent me to University of Nebraska at Omaha 1 year to finish up my undergraduate degree. So we get there. It's 3 months before school starts. I'm going to be there from January to December, 12 months. First thing I did was hardly ever get a haircut. I'd go to school, I'd have ripped sweats, cutoffs, had a bike, because we didn't live it. No one knew I was in the military. It was 1971, Kent State. You know, so I was like a narc. I was an undercover agent. No one even knew at that time that I was in the military. Yeah, Max?
We should have won that war had they let the military run it rather than the politicians, right?
I don't know if we'd ever won that war. No. That'd have been a tough war to win. There were no front lines. You only owned the ground you stood on.
I know that you were under strict rules of returning fire.
No.
You weren't in Vietnam?
No. We had War Zone D was a free fire zone. Anything in War Zone D, because that was supposed to be evacuated, including water buffalo, M72 laws, remember the anti-tank? They could do a job on a water buffalo. M16 just make them mad. So no, we were basically a free fire. We never had to ask permission to do anything out there. It's just, you had no front lines. But the minute I moved off of this stage over there, that I didn't own this anymore. It was just a tough war. I think it's just like several other instances here lately. It's a no-win situation, unfortunately. And 56,000 lives later, we finally decided it was a no-win situation.
Colonel, before I turn it back over to Doc from the American Legion, I just want to...
Thank you, guys. And the game doesn't start for 30 minutes yet, so...
Sir, I just want to thank you. We salute you from the American Legion.
Thank you, President. Just a second.
We know that Samuel L. Jackson got paid to tell your story. Unfortunately, we can't pay anything.
That's okay.
But what we're going to do